What's good, everybody? Welcome to episode 5 of the Upper Room Community Podcast, where you're here to be elevated in mindset, habit, and spirit. I'm your host, Raquel Sade, and thank you for tuning in, and welcome back if you've been watching the previous episodes. I'm so happy to be here with y'all for episode 5, and happy fall, by the way. Summer is over, so it's time to put on the full attire, time to layer your outfits, and just go all out. That's my best part of fall. I can layer my outfits. I could do pretty much everything and add more elements to my outfit since it's not super cold, but it's not really warm either. But we're going to get straight into the topic. So for today's episode, we're going to be talking about our butt. And not the butt you probably just thought about when I said that, but we're going to be talking about and discussing, is your butt too big? Is your excuse too big? And are you making that excuse or that issue or that factor way bigger than the solution at hand? If you've been privy to watching this podcast so far, you should understand the depths of our words and why our words are so important. So we like to look at the root issue, because once again, what you say, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So we have to target what it is you're talking about so that we can get to the root issue. So we're going to be discussing our butt, our excuses, and all the outside factors that can potentially be keeping us out of the promised land. So when we're discussing the word butt, the definition of but is a conjunction. It's a conjunction word which is used to introduce something contrasting with what has already been mentioned. And the word but tends to be used as a form of cancellation to negate what has initially been stated. So when looking at the word but, we definitely tend to use the word to validate our excuses. Let's say I really need to go to the grocery store right now, but it's raining outside. So we already know that the solution is the problem is you need some food and you need to go get some food, but you threw an excuse in there to try to validate or validate in your mind what you've already been trying to validate before you said it out loud. And we need to target that, because we need to try to take the word but out of our vocabulary as much as possible, especially when it pertains to our future and what we know we're supposed to be doing, because using that word but honestly can help defeat the purpose of what we're even doing in the first place. We tend to use that word so often either to validate our excuse or either to minimize our purpose. I really have faith in this podcast, but there's so many different podcasts out there that are discussing the same thing. That statement alone is taking the power of what it is that you're already doing and placing it into an outside factor that doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter how many podcasts are out there. I definitely have faith in this podcast because I know what I'm called to do. And because I know that this is something I'm called to do, I'm not even about to be worrying about the 1,000 other podcasts that's out there. I'm worried about what I'm doing. So we need to take that word but out, because the word but tends to focus on the outside sources when we need to just be focusing on what we can control, and that's ourselves, that's our mind, that's our habit, and that's our spirit. There needs to be a time in life when we make a decision to pursue what's greater in spite of the outside factors that are set against us. Again, we give too much power to these outside sources and not enough power to our source and what we can do with that. And if we are there's always going to be some outside factors that can be there to possibly limit what's at hand, and that's because there's always going to be a tug and pull between what's greater and what's already here. And we have to learn what's greater is much more important than what we're facing right now. We have to take that mindset where we don't care what it looks like, we don't care what the outside factors are. We don't care what the statistics are, because we know what we're called to do. So once we know that, like, there should be nothing that affects how you're going to pursue something, and there should be nothing that affects you actually pursuing it. In this season, we need to keep pushing. Like, there's gonna be so many setbacks, there's gonna be so many factors that can possibly cloud our judgment. But if we take our focus off of those factors, like, we have to keep pushing in this season. Like, it's a new season, it's fall, it's the fourth quarter of the year. Like, don't let what you see, don't let what the previous quarters look like keep you from making this the best quarter you ever had so far in this year. And once you like tackle that mindset, there's nothing that's gonna hold you back from now. Like, we got to push through. It's the season of the push through, because there are open doors, or there are doors that are waiting to be opened. And the only way they can be opened is if we pursue and we push and we make it a point for those doors to be opened for us. Like, some doors are not going to be opened until we take the steps, until we take the action to actually open that door on our behalf, because nobody's going to do it for us. So this is the season to push. This is the season to keep pursuing, to keep going, despite of the statistics and despite of what everybody else can be saying about what your destiny is. And this is a little bit off topic, but not really. But this is why it's important that when you are building a dream, or when you've received a promise that is for your life, it's so important to nurture that thing and to make sure you're not actually expressing that to everybody. Because talking to people that don't have the same vision as you, or talking to people that don't have the same amount of faith that you have, they're always going to try to fill your mind with the buts. They're always going to be trying to fill your mind with the excuses and the reasons why you shouldn't pursue it, and all these other statistics and factors that don't matter, because all it does is it tries to eat away at your faith, and it essentially puts a word curse on what it is that you're doing. Like, and we don't need that. So it's important that during these seasons, when you're cultivating yourself and you're cultivating your dreams, and you have a promise that is going to come to pass, like, you do not talk to people that whose faith is low, and you don't talk to people that don't understand the vision, or are not able to hold that vision and nurture it, because they can try to shoot those down. And that's why we got to stay protected against those fiery darts that try to come to us on a daily basis. Like, there's so much noise in the world, and it's important that we can control what noise we're hearing and what noise we're receiving, because it really be the people around you that can sometimes, shoot down your dreams and shoot down your visions. It could be family, it could be friends, coworkers, people that you love and hold dear to you. But at the same time, sometimes you got to be able to recognize when it's the time to just lay low, stay quiet, and pursue in your own time. And it's very important to realize that that same but you're using as an excuse can be the same exact factor that can motivate the next person to keep pushing past their current situation. Because again, and I talk about this in basically every episode, that when we're called to do something, if we know that it's something of substance and it's something that's good, it's not just for ourselves, but it's also to help be a solution in other areas in other people's lives. So if you learn that that same excuse that you're using can actually be used as a motivation, because there's nothing new under the sun, and a lot of the problems we go through, they're not isolated issues. Like, there's the same issue I can be going through can very much be the same issue the next person is going through, and my testimony and of pushing through despite the factors or despite the issues can be used to motivate that next person in that same situation that I was in. And I think it's just important on shifting the focus from ourselves alone and recognizing that everything is connected. Our lives are connected to other people's lives, and it's just important to know that if I'm trying to pursue something greater and something is giving me pushback or resistance, then it's clearly a good sign that I'm actually going about it the right way. Because nothing good comes without like some form of persecution or some form of difficulty that you have to acknowledge, but also ignore at the same time. Like, of course, it's important to acknowledge, like the Bible says, to count the cost. So, of course, it's important to acknowledge the different things that you're going to have to go through, but you shouldn't use that as a reason to stop you from pursuing what it is that you know you should be doing anyway. And one verse I actually love that actually speaks to this matter at hand is Philippians 2 verse 14 and 15. And it says, to do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God, without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. So if in that verse Philippians that it's telling us to not complain in all things, then that's actually showing us that there are some factors that quote unquote warrant a reason to complain or warrant an excuse as to why it's so hard for this thing to get done or why the thing isn't getting done in our lives. But if we make the decision to do it without complaining, that can actually encourage the next person to do the same. Because again, like that verse shows that there's always going to be some factors that are a little difficult or may be difficult in the moment, or may be hard in the moment, or may seem impossible. But it's showing us to not complain, because we are the light in this perverse world, in this crooked world. And if we're the light, then that means that people are looking at us, people are gravitating towards us, people are seeing what we do with certain situations and how we handle it. And we always have to recognize that we are the light of the world, which means that once again, our lives are not just for ourselves, but they're for the next person as well. And if we are operating with that understanding and knowing that people are watching, we will be very conscious of what energy we're putting out, what we're saying, and how that can affect other people's lives as well. And there are always going to be factors and situations that we have to learn to deal with and work around, because we live in a crooked and perverted generation that is unfortunately ran by crooked and perverted systems. And because we are in a world that is currently ran by crooked and perverted systems, there are some things that we shouldn't, quote unquote, have to deal with. But on the other hand, we have to make a decision that either we will settle and choose to be a victim of oppression, or we will make a decision to never settle and become a victim of these crooked and perverted systems that are trying to keep us in the same place and trying to keep us oppressed. And it's important to recognize that, like, this world is ran off of some systems that are perverted and are crooked. So if that is the case, then we should already know that advancing is going to come with some adversities, and it's going to come with some systems that aren't working in our favor, because they rather everybody else stay down. So why, if we know that's the truth, then why are we still looking at the outside factors? Like, why are we still looking at these quote unquote difficulties? Why are we still looking at those to give us an excuse to not even pursue what we know we should be doing anyway? Like there's so many things, and I don't want to seem insensitive, because, you know, like, we all going through our struggles. You get what I'm saying? Like, life is not easy, but there's so many things in society that help warrant our oppression. Like, there's so many factors that are in our communities that shouldn't be there anymore. Like, and it starts with the mindsets too. Like, we get so comfortable in knowing that there are certain systems that are oppressing us, and that makes it okay for us to act a certain way, or that makes it okay to not have a mindset of excellence and pushing through, because we know that there's certain factors that are oppressing us. Like, it just doesn't sit right with me. A lot of the things that are the struggle shouldn't even be a part of the struggle, if you get what I'm saying, because a lot of the times we make that the struggle, like our lack of operating excellence or our lack of operating in sufficiency and in wisdom is now a part of our culture, and we make our own limits, unfortunately. Like, they shouldn't even be limits. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's so important for our communities to really understand that a lot of these outside factors that are perverted and are crooked are not the reason why we operate in the way we do sometimes. At the end of the day, we have to learn that we can control ourselves, and there's certain things we must get rid of and not excuse any longer, because there's people that are depending on us. Our children are depending on us. Like, our communities are depending on us. The youth coming up are depending on our sufficiency and are depending on our emotional intelligence, they're depending on our ability to be there for them, the ability to nurture them and actually guide them in the right way and not just dismiss them. Like, there's so many things that are not our outside factors that warrant people being absent or people being not operating to their fullest potential. And I think that has to stop now. Like, it really has to stop now. And there's so many people that are affected by it, and you can see that in our youth. Like, our youth need more attention. Our youth need more nurturing. Our youth, they need more guidance. We have the control to do better. Like, we have the power to do better. Some people might not have the resources to change certain systems, but what you do while you're underneath that certain system is what matters. Because let's say you don't have the resources to change that certain perverted system, but if you nurture your child, if you give them the guidance that's needed, if you give them the wisdom and instill in them the way that they should go, they can be that very child that changes that system. So we can't just use these perverted systems as an excuse to stay in a minuscule place or in a minuscule mindset and stay at the bare minimum, because there's a way out. It might not be with you, but you can do what you know what's best to help nurture the person that could get people out of that system that's affecting the growth of the community. And because doing that might take a lot of energy, or because doing that might take a lot of strength and time, it's important that we have that in spite of mentality. When looking at the term in spite of, it is defined as without being affected by the particular factor mentioned. There has to be a time when we are not letting these outside factors affect us to the point of neglect, or affect us to the point where we are now neglecting what we know we're supposed to be doing in the first place. Like, we have to have that mentality that no matter what, I'm going to pursue this thing. I'm going to pursue learning this thing until I'm able to act it out in its fullness. We are created for such a time as this, and if not now, then when? Like, of course, some things are created or some things need to be done in its season, but just because it's season to do it is here doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. Like, it's never going to just be like starting off. It's not always going to be peaches and cream. I don't want to say never, because, I feel like there are some things that we can be able to, with our mindset, get through with ease. But there are going to be some things that, because there's some pushback, or because there's some factors that are fighting against you trying to get this done, it doesn't mean it's not your season to do it. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't get done right now. In fact, it just means that you need to learn to endure. You need to learn to push through, and you need to learn that with better times comes with some trials that come with it, because there's always going to be some pushback for something greater. Like, even if the pushback can be killed in 1 second, or sometimes the pushback keeps coming as you keep doing it, but we have to keep pursuing and keep pushing, and we have to learn in this generation to endure, because there's greater at hand. And one person that fully understands the no matter what mentality is Yahshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. Like, we're going to look at Luke 22, verse 42 through 44. And it says that Jesus said, "Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel appeared to him from heaven, strengthened him, and being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. That chapter right there, Luke 22, like that chapter truly shows, like, no one said it was gonna be easy. Like, no one said that pursuing our calling and making it come to fruition is going to be easy. Like, Jesus was in agony. He was in pain. His will for him was to die. But does that mean he wanted to die? No. He said it, Lord, if it is your will, let this cup pass from me. Like, let this burden pass from me. Let it go. But nevertheless, let your will be done. Like, nevertheless, we have to have that mentality, like, in spite of, no matter what. Like, because it's bigger than ourselves, and we need to realize that, like, a lot of the things that we are pushing for or need to push for but aren't doing in the moment, they're bigger than ourselves. They're bigger than our comfort. They're bigger than our ease. They're bigger than our rest. They're bigger than us. And Jesus is a prime example in showing that. He is the prime example in showing that things got to get done no matter what. Like, Jesus knew that there was going to be pain. Jesus knew that there was going to be moments that weren't easy. Jesus knew that there was going to be death at the end. It doesn't mean that he necessarily wanted to go through it, but he knew the purpose in doing it was so much greater than him. And what did he do? He kept going. He endured. He pursued, in spite of the pain, in spite of the suffering, in spite of the people mocking him and coming against him, spitting on him, beating him. Like, he went through it all because he understood that he had that no matter what mentality. He had that doing it in spite of mentality. And that's something we can all learn from, like, because it's not going to be easy all the time. And he understood that. He still felt the emotions, but he didn't let the emotions keep him in that point of crippling. He didn't let his emotions keep him in that place. He recognized the emotions and he pushed through because he understood that there was something greater that was connected to what he was called to do. Pursuing greater will come with its problems, but again, that's because we live in a fallen world that are ran by evil systems. And if there was no pushback, like the main reason why there is pushback is because these systems are in place so that there's nothing great that comes from it. And if we are pursuing greater, that means that we are actually doing what it takes to dismantle these evil systems. So once we recognize that what we are called to do is to tear down these evil and perverted and crooked systems and build up even better ones and greater ones that can better everybody in this world, then we will understand that such a calling like that is definitely going to come with this pushback, and it's definitely going to come with this warfare. But we have to be equipped for that, and we also have to be equipped in knowing that there's going to come with pushback. There's going to come with some pain. Because you're carrying a load that's bigger than yourself. If you are doing the right calling, like if you are doing a calling that is from the Lord himself, and if you're doing a calling that, like, I be trying not to get all quote unquote preachy or whatever, but it's so true that there are factors that are bigger than us, and we have to push past those factors, because if we don't, if we comply, then we are giving power to these evil, perverted, and crooked systems that are still in place. Our compliance is not necessary. We do not comply with these systems because we are here to tear down these systems and build new ones. Pursuing greater will come with this pushback. It will come with its adversities, because we were created to dismantle these evil systems. And if we are doing and pursuing what is greater, there's going to be the pushback, because these evil systems want to stay in place, but we are called to dismantle them. So of course there's going to be some kind of warfare in the process of diminishing and not even diminishing, but demolishing these evil systems, because they shouldn't be in place. And we have the power and we have the ability to come against these things, to tear them down and build up something even better. So there's going to be some pushback. There's going to be some warfare behind it. And that's why it's important to count the cost. The Bible says to count the cost, because you'll know that there are going to be some things that aren't easy that you have to go through. But because you already those issues were already accounted for, they won't even affect you to the point where you're not even pursuing that thing anymore. Like, it will not affect you to the point of neglect. So it's important to recognize that when you are doing something that is greater than yourself, there's going to be pushback, because this world is ran by systems that want to keep us oppressed. But we have to keep pushing and keep pursuing. We need that mentality that keeps us going regardless of what the outside factors are. Our butt is the exact mentality that's used to keep these evil systems in power. And if Jesus himself, knowing his calling, said, I know I was called here to dismantle evil and separate evil from my children, but I don't want to die, he would have given that evil system the exact thing it needed to continue thriving, and that's compliance. That's settling. We cannot settle and comply with these rules and with these systems, because they are meant to keep us bound. They are meant to keep us down, and they are meant to keep us in a state of commingling with evil. And we have the power to dismantle these things. Like, imagine if Yahshua, Jesus himself, said he knew he was called to do something, and he knew he was called to die, but he don't want to die. Like, we will not have salvation, and we would never have power over evil. But now, because he came, because he did what he was supposed to do, and he fulfilled his purpose, we now have the power over evil. We now have the power to dismantle evil, and we now have the power to keep pursuing good and not even have the evil within us any longer. And we talked about this in another episode before, but I want to emphasize it and bring it up again, because this is the exact reason why knowing your why, like knowing why you're doing something, is so important in this pursuit of doing what you know you're called to do, in spite of the outside factors that are coming against you. Once you understand the why, that's enough fuel, and that's a good enough reason to keep you going and keep you pushing, regardless of the outside factors and regardless of the pain, regardless of whatever you have to go through. Knowing the why you're doing something, knowing the purpose in it, is the very thing that's needed to keep you in a place of pursuing that thing, so that you can actually see it come to pass in your life. Like, we when people do things for no explanation, or when people do things for reasons that are not greater than themselves, they perish in the process. And we don't want to be one of those people. We want to be the people that understand that enduring is a superpower, and we need that in order to keep going, and we need that in order to see what we're fighting for come to pass and come into fruition in our lives and in the lives of others. And one scripture that is perfect in explaining that is Hebrews 12 verse 2, and I'm going to read it in the Amplified version. It says, and this is talking about Jesus, Yeshua. It says, who for the joy of accomplishing the goal set before him endured the cross, disregarding the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, revealing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work. So that verse said he ignored the shame. He ignored the things that came with it. And because he ignored those things that came with it, he was able to be glorified in the end and go back to what he originally was, which is at the right hand of God. Because he humbled himself, he came down here on earth as a human being to defeat evil and help us recognize that we have the power to defeat evil through him. Because he understood the joy that came behind it, because he understood the saving of lives that came behind it, he was able to ignore the shame that came with it, ignore the pain that came with it, ignore the mocking, ignore all the just sad things that happened to him. He was able to ignore that and get glorified in the end, and not only glorify himself, but help bring other people up so that they can recognize who they are and whose they are. And it's important that, he is a prime example of us knowing our why, us knowing why we're doing something, us knowing why we are pursuing this, because we know that the end is greater, and we have to lay hold of that and hold on to that truth while we are pursuing greater and while there are adversities that are coming our way. And one thing I can see is that in the generation coming up after me, and even the generation I'm in right now, we're so ruled by our emotions to the point that it's crippling. Like, we are brainwashed, and not all of us, but a good majority of us are brainwashed to think that our emotions are the ones that indicate whether we should be doing something or not. Like, our emotions do not tell us what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Like, because you're getting anxiety, or because you're getting frustrated, or because something seems like it's so hard and you're so tired, like, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that it's so important for our generation and for the generation after us to realize that our emotions can lie to us. Our emotions can be our worst enemy. In fact, they kind of are our worst enemy at most times, because we don't pursue certain things because of how we feel. If we're getting too anxious, it's like, oh, let me stay away from that. If we're feeling too sad about it, oh, let me stay away from that. No, we have to endure. Our generations and the generations coming up after us need to learn the power in endurance. Like, endurance is a superpower. Endurance will get you through to the other side. It will get you through. And I'm pushing that in this episode, because this episode is all about endurance, ignoring the but, ignoring the outside factors, ignoring the pain that might come with it, and push to what you know is greater. Like, it's on the other end. It's there for you. You just gotta come in alignment with that and push from where you are right now. Like, we gotta toughen up, y'all. We gotta toughen up, We have to, because if we don't, we're going to fail not only ourselves, but fail the lives of those that we're supposed to be affecting and helping. We cannot fail. We have to do what we have to do, and we have to keep pushing in spite of. Remember that in everything that you're doing. When you know there's greater before you, you have to remember to keep pushing in spite of. And I hope this episode was a great time to self-reflect and to just help you reevaluate what you're thinking, what you're saying, and how that's affecting your actions. And once again, I'll say to y'all, like, share this with everyone. Share this with your friends. Share this with somebody that you having issues with right now. Share it with a stranger. Share with everyone, because this message should be heard and should be applied in every single one of our lives, including my own. And I hope y'all enjoyed. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think. Let's discuss, let's talk, and I'll see y'all on the next episode. And I really pray that this is what will help you elevate in mindset, habit, and spirit.